I wanted to talk about one of the strangest books I've ever read. It's called Lessons in Disaster by Gordon M. Goldstein. And what makes the book very strange, it's strange on a couple of levels. First, uh, the author was charged with making essentially the memoirs of George McBundy, who was national security advisor to both Kennedy and Johnson. And I think one of his brothers also had something to do with the CIA. But so the author uh, basically spent years interviewing him and putting tapes together and preparing for this really in-depth view. And McBundy himself said, yes, mistakes were made and things could be learned from it. So the best thing for me to do is just tell my side of it in total, and here we go. And he died before it was completed. His his tape recorded notes were being held by McBundy as part of their agreement. He held on. He held on to everything, all the original source material until he died. And when he died, the source material passed to his widow, and McBundy's widow decided, nah, we don't really want this stuff making it out to public. So, yeah, we're keeping all this. And so the poor author here spent years setting up to write this biography of McBundy, or at least maybe kind of some in depth uh, view into the decision making process that was going on during Vietnam. And when it was all over, he had access to none of the work he did. So he had to do everything from memory. And I don't think I think his thesis kind of fails, and I think what he was trying to do with the book ends up failing too. I don't know if it would have been better with his notes, but the reason I bring the book up because even though his thesis fails and the setup of the book fails, there are things in that are rather illuminating. I would not recommend reading this book. Uh, it's a slog unless you're disturbed by the Vietnam War and really want to know what was going on inside people's heads at the decision making level. Otherwise, you won't find this book interesting at all. And I'm deep in the Vietnam War is something that really bothers me and drives me. And even I was having trouble with this because just of the direction the author was going with things. So if you look at the book, it's almost laid out like almost like a managerial book where it's like lesson one and lesson two, and but the lessons don't really pan out because he's not really. It's not like he's taking a here's the central lesson we learn and then building material. Because if you lay out a book like that, you need to be jumping around. You essentially need to be ignoring chronological order and just going entirely by subject and shoving it in there, which he didn't actually do, so it doesn't add up. I think one of the major theses that he was attempting to push was the idea that Kennedy wanted to get us out of the Vietnam War and essentially didn't end up doing it because of his assassination. Now, in my mind, the way he lays out, instead of making JFK kind of this hero, it actually makes him look very banal and villainous because JFK absolutely decided that he was not going to do anything to upset the Vietnam War during his first term. If he was going to do anything at all, it was going to be in his second term because which complicated stuff for the time period. There had already been a lot of repercussions for China uh, going communist, and somehow people in the political sphere pointing fingers trying to blame each other. So at that time, it was kind of considered to be the kiss of death uh, to preside over the loss of another country to the communist realm. And what Kennedy had envisioned was as soon as he won his second term, he would start laying the groundwork for allowing what he would call a reconciliation government to form in South Vietnam. The reconciliation government would pretty much be made of people who wanted reunification of all Vietnam at all costs. And he realized the end result would be that the entire country would probably end up some form of communist. But this is the kicker. He and pretty much everybody else around him kind of saw it going that way anyway. Yet they persisted in doing the war. Now, you might say, oh, well, at least Kennedy was trying to end it. Yeah, but he was doing it at the cost of several thousand lives that were going to end up being cost there. Uh, the thing that's probably stunning in this book, and this is the thing that points to what is going on in today's world, is the level of arrogance portrayed. It kind of makes your skull ring, because these are people, and they're talking about all various advisors around McBundy, as well as him, and these are people who essentially walked out of their Ivy League schools, had all the secret handshakes, and all, knew all the right people, and they viewed government as that they were the people who had the right to rule, because they came from the right families, filled the right squares, knew the right people. And it wasn't just a mere, oh well, yeah, we're supposed to be here, we're entitled to be here, we are the better people, nobody could possibly be doing this better than we could. And watching them go through the initial phases of the Vietnam War and getting into the grody parts under LBJ, because most of Kennedy's cabinet continued with LBJ. Uh, it's just painful to watch these people not being able to grasp how their actions work. People like Satan incarnate McNamara, that's an opinion. Uh, this total jackass of a person sitting there with his computational models he came up from bombing raids in World War II, saying, yes, if we apply this amount of tonnage of bombs, this will result in X at the negotiating table in Vietnam. And he absolutely 100% believed it, or at least expounded upon believing it, till the day he walked out of office. Now, many years later, he kind of like, oh, well, yeah, I guess those calculations were wrong. But yeah, honestly believing that he had a formula that X amount of bombs yields this result at a conference table, that he could predict what the other side would be willing to give up at the table based on the tonnage dropped. Unbelievable stuff. I mean, and that's just the smallest example of some of the stuff that's going on there. And in all honesty, I don't think it's changed as much as it should have. In fact, it's probably changed very little at all. I suspect that our foreign policy establishment is still full of people exactly like George McBundy and Robert McNamara. People who are convinced that they can't possibly be wrong, convinced that they essentially have some form of, if not divine right, the secular equivalent of a divine right to rule. And then if you look at what's been going on in Ukraine and Russia and what is currently going on, it should kind of chill you to the bone to think that people with this level of arrogance, yet not particularly knowledgeable about the areas they're dealing with, are making decisions on this level. Now, Vietnam wasn't so bad because, well, they couldn't fight back. Russia, on the other hand, is fully capable of fighting back. They have the largest nuclear weapons arsenal on the planet. So, if you're the type who's going, well, they probably kind of know what they're doing, I would rethink it. If you're making life decisions based on the idea that you think they know what they're doing, you should at least come to a conclusion that maybe they don't. And I'm firmly convinced that they don't know what they're talking about, and they don't know what they're doing. So I think that kind of makes the point I'm looking at here is just that I don't think the foreign policy establishment has changed that much. I think the level of arrogance is not only as bad, it might even be worse. I think since 1990, with the collapse of the Soviet bloc, I think this arrogance level's gone much higher. I think, to quote Orrin McIntyre, actually, I'll paraphrase, I can't quote, but the idea that I believe the current order who's making decisions on things in our foreign policy establishment is convinced that they are absolutely incapable of making a mistake, that the march of history has been going in a particular direction for them, and that it's an inevitable, the end of this course is inevitable. Nothing can be done to alter it. So if they just continue going on the way they're going, they will get the results they want. And looking at the brinksmanship that's starting to occur in Ukraine and Russia, really makes me think that this problem's got far worse than rather getting in any way better. So please smash the like button. What do you think? Do you think our foreign policy establishment has gotten any smarter since the Vietnam War? Are they the same? Are they different? Is there something you want to know more about the foreign policy establishment or Vietnam or Russia, Ukraine? Ask your questions, make your comments below. If you know somebody who might like this, please share it with them. And if you like my content, please do subscribe. All right, thank you for spending time with me tonight. Hope to see you again in a future video.